America is still reeling from one of the biggest cheating schemes ever uncovered. We're going to give you a first-hand look at how it was done. I'm Elizabeth Vargas, and America's News starts right now.
Tonight, high-tech glasses and X-ray poker tables, all part of the biggest gambling scandal in decades. A casino cheating expert joins us live to show us how the technology works.
That camera is going to analyze the edges of those cards, and it's actually going to tell me who's going to win.
Plus, the FBI's investigation into NBA veteran Terry Rozier, who's accused of allegedly throwing a game. His attorney joins me live. Then, a dramatic escalation between the U.S. and Venezuela as President Trump sends the most advanced aircraft carrier group to the waters off Venezuela. And later, New York Attorney General Letitia James fingerprinted in Virginia. She just pleaded not guilty to alleged mortgage fraud.
So there's no fear today. No fear. No fear. No fear.
NewsNation was inside the packed courtroom.
Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. We begin tonight in Washington, where in just a few hours, President Trump will start heading to Asia for a high-stakes trip testing his role as deal-maker-in-chief. A possible trade agreement with China is on the line. The White House says the president will meet with Chinese President Xi in South Korea on Thursday. National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett has high hopes about the big meeting.
We're still hopeful that we can get this thing to work out. We were frustrated with some of the Chinese actions. We think that they were unacceptable the last few weeks, but there has been sort of a thawing of relations over the last few days, and conversations are continuing.
Well, we will see. China, for its part, hasn't even confirmed the meeting's happening. Relations are on shaky ground between the two countries after a tariff war broke out between the world's two biggest economies. President Trump is expected to sign a series of economic agreements in Asia, including one involving critical rare earth minerals. Now, this is key. China controls more than 90% of global output of rare earths, and they're essential to almost everything you do in your life, everything you use in your life, from your cars to your iPhones to your television sets, even to our nation's weapon systems. It guides our missiles to their targets. Still, President Trump is touting his tariffs, writing on Truth Social today that they are the reason the stock market is soaring. All three major indices closed at new record highs today. The Dow ended the day above 47,000 for the first time ever. Now, most economists say the big rally happened despite the tariffs, not because of them. They say the driver today was a key report showing lower inflation than expected. Either way, it's good news for investors and consumers. It means President Trump is likely to get that interest rate cut that he wants when the Federal Reserve meets next week. NewsNation's Washington correspondent Kelly Meyer joins us now live from the White House with more on this meeting and a possible trade deal with China. Kelly, what have you learned?
Yeah, good evening, Elizabeth. President Trump getting ready to take off here from the White House just about 3 hours from now for quite possibly the most consequential trip of this presidency yet. He is set to meet with China's President Xi Jinping, as you said. And the president has been in the West Wing for most of the day today, I can tell you, as he prepares for this whirlwind trip across Asia, meetings in Malaysia, Japan, South Korea. So first up, Malaysia, you're going to see that on Sunday. Leaders are trying to push for a peace pact between Thailand and Cambodia and have President Trump preside over that ceremony, though peace has not yet been reached. Trump also hopes to nail down pledged investments from Japan and South Korea. But the most crucial item on this agenda is his sit down with China's Xi Jinping. President Trump says fentanyl will be his first question to Xi when they sit down. China, the nucleus of the deadly drug, where that flow begins. But trade is still the dominant issue. I asked President Trump's Energy Secretary here today what he expects from the trip when it comes to nuclear energy and rare earths. Take a listen.
President Trump, a master negotiator. So I think, I don't know exactly what will come from it, but I'm sure massive benefit to America. He's going to talk to world leaders abroad about the key issues of the day and find that common ground and bring home some wins for America.
Now, a wild card on this trip, Elizabeth, is whether or not President Trump meets with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un like he did in 2019. A senior White House official telling me there is no announcement at this time, though President Trump told me in August that he would like to meet with Kim Jong-un and says they get along great. Elizabeth.
All right. In the meantime, Kelly, we had this big news with Canada today. President Trump announced he's ending all trade talks with Canada after the Ontario, which is just a province of Canada, put out an ad featuring former President Reagan. It infuriated the president. Ontario announced today it will take the ad down, but those trade talks are still off.
Exactly, and we don't know where those stand at this hour, Elizabeth. So the Ontario premier, as you said, pulling that ad after being really pulled through the mud by President Trump and his administration over this, as he also terminated those trade talks and called this ad fake. Trump's last post on this before the ad was pulled said, quote, Canada cheated and got caught. They took a big buy ad saying Ronald Reagan did not like tariffs when he actually loved tariffs for our country and its national security. That's the reason President Trump says that he put these tariffs on, is for national security. Now, the ad features real snippets from President Reagan's 1987 address. Listen for yourself, the comparison.
Now, imposing such tariffs or trade barriers and restrictions of any kind are steps that I am loath to take. And in a moment, I'll mention the sound economic reasons for this. That over the long run, such trade barriers hurt every American worker and consumer. That over the long run, such trade barriers hurt every American worker and consumer.
Now, today, Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney said he is ready to pick up those trade talks whenever Trump is. Now, the two will be in Asia for this summit next week, so we'll see if they have a pull aside. Elizabeth.
Yeah, I think Trump is angry because they edited former President Reagan's speech there and remarks there, and maybe he's saying that to make themselves look good. We shall see how this ends, but boy, is he hot under the collar about this right now. Kelly Meyer, thank you so much. All right, we're going to turn now to the waters of South America, where President Trump is escalating his war on drug cartels. The Pentagon has announced it is sending one of the department's largest aircraft carriers to the U.S. Southern Command. The USS Gerald Ford, which has 5 destroyers in its group, is being deployed to the region. Pentagon spokesperson Sean Parnell says on X, the forces will enhance and augment existing capabilities to disrupt narcotics trafficking. Now, this move comes just hours after the military fired its 10th strike on a boat alleged to be involved in drug smuggling in the Caribbean. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said, quote, 6 male narco-terrorists were on board when the vessel was hit, and all 6 were killed, end quote. He said that the vessel was operated by the criminal gang Tren de Aragua from Venezuela. He gave no evidence to back this up. The military escalation in the region is raising concern from members of Congress on both sides of the aisle, uniting even those who normally disagree in fear that Trump is heading toward a war with Venezuela, leaving lawmakers in the dark.
Bluntly, these programs I should not find out about in the press. I am concerned about the steady march towards war with Venezuela.
The administration needs to give insight into Congress. That's part of it. If this was happening with this level of insight under the Biden administration, I'd be apoplectic.
All right, for more on all this, we're joined by our senior national security contributor, Lieutenant General Richard Newton. General, great to have you on the show. This is big news about this aircraft carrier group. It's a dramatic escalation, involves the Navy's most modern and technologically advanced carrier. Why would you move a carrier like this to the Southern Command?
Good evening. Good evening, Elizabeth. It is. It's the most modern, largest aircraft carrier in the world. And the Pentagon is moving it actually from the Mediterranean, where it's been serving in the Mideast area of responsibility for the last several months, and moving it into the vicinity of Venezuela, specifically in the Caribbean. It's a significant move, not only, as you mentioned as well, it's not just the aircraft carrier, but it's aircraft carrier wing, a number of battleships with it, such as destroyers and other capabilities, as well as some submarines. Significant firepower going into this part of the world and close to home. Finally, I think, however, the president is obviously raising the ante here and sending a signal of his very clear focus on counter drug operations and counter foreign terrorist organizations now been designated as these, this assault on drugs coming to the streets of the American people.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that case has been made in terms of being a combatant issue here, but we are definitely raising the ante here.
We just heard Republican Senator James Lankford, Democratic Senator Chris Coons both express concern that President Trump is marching us closer and closer to a war with Venezuela. Do you see moving this carrier group as a sign of that?
Well, it's certainly an indication of upping military capability, obviously, in the region. Let me also remind, we've got a squadron of F-35s at Roosevelt Roads in Puerto Rico. We've got 10,000
Yeah, we already have
sailors and
10,000
Marines.
troops there.
And we've had B-52 flybys and B-1 flybys, my previous aircraft, in the region as well. This is unprecedented. So I think it's time, and I would agree with both the senators in a general sense, perhaps now is the time for, and Secretary Hegseth said this yesterday at the White House, to go to Congress, explain to both on the Senate and the House, why we're moving these these military capabilities into the region. What's the threat? What is the aim or the end game of maneuvering these capabilities to the region? And really, what are we trying to achieve here? I think that's owed to the American people. And then I think you need to explain also in turn through the Congress and perhaps the American people that we're going well beyond just counter-drug operations from a law enforcement standpoint, Elizabeth, to now these are engaged combatants that we need to be focused on. But I want to connect the dots here in the law of armed conflict, that these are valid military targets that we're going after, not just counter-drug operations.
Yeah, that's a key thing, because we have a lot of legal analysts talking about these strikes on these drug boats and saying that they are illegal under U.S. and international law. We just had the 10th strike last night that Secretary Pete Hegseth said killed 6 members of Tren de Aragua. But members of Congress are complaining that, thus far, the administration and Secretary Hegseth have provided no proof or intelligence backing any of these claims up. In your very long experience with military law, because you were a general leading and commanding, are these strikes legal or illegal?
Well, first and foremost, I applaud the administration for focusing on something that's essential to for the American people going after these drug operations in Latin America. We've been doing this, however, for decades. Second point is,
we haven't been killing them. We normally interdict these drugs and arrest these people. We don't just summarily execute.
Correct, but it's amping up, obviously the military strikes against these drug combatants or drug operators and so forth. But my point was going to be is I still need to see the evidence that is tied to the fact that you're going after your fine fixed targeting and finishing or killing these drug operators, that they are technically military combatants for the use of U.S. military forces, just like you and I have talked about. That's the change here. That's the gap I need to have closed in on. Here, I'll give you an example. Let's say these drug operators were tied to Al-Qaeda or ISIS, or perhaps with our men and women in the uniform in the region, they were threatened by these drug boats. That's a different scenario here. This is going after the transshipment of drug operations that have been occurring for decades. So what has changed in order to raise that ante up there? Final point is, I would advise the administration, the transshipment piece of this, as we're seeing on our screen, is one part of it, relatively small part of this, but the real main issue here of counter-drug operations is the demand of the United States, but really the supply being provided by China with the precursors to fentanyl chemicals, Mexico, Ecuador, Colombia. That's where the real aspect of this is. If you want a war on drugs, that's where you take the war on drugs instead of the supply.
Right. It's not Venezuela. It's many other countries. And there is no evidence that any fentanyl at all comes through or from Venezuela. Almost all the fentanyl comes from Mexico and China, and that is the drug that is killing the most Americans. General Newton, really something that's taking place right now off the coast of Venezuela, unprecedented military power there. Interesting to hear your take. I'm sure we'll hear more from you in the coming weeks. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
All right, coming up for us, New York Attorney General Letitia James just pleaded not guilty to charges of alleged mortgage fraud pushed by the Trump administration. Her trial is now set to start in January, but will the case make it that far? Plus, another massive case making massive headlines, the NBA betting scandal. We are going to speak to the lawyer of the star player indicted in the case, why he says Terry Rozier will win this fight. All right, New York Attorney General Letitia James found herself in an unfamiliar position in a courtroom today when she was arraigned in Virginia. She pleaded not guilty to 2 felony counts in front of a packed court. Those counts include bank fraud and making false financial statements that allegedly helped her get more favorable terms on a mortgage. Letitia James then emerged from the courthouse to cheers from her supporters and gave what seemed like a pretty impassioned stump speech.
There's no fear today. No fear. No fear. No fear. Because I believe that justice will rain down like water and righteousness like a mighty stream. I will do my job each and every day, and that's why I'm headed back to New York, because there's work to be done standing up for the rule of law. God bless you and thank you all.
Letitia James says she has been unfairly targeted by President Trump in a weaponized justice system. NewsNation's Libby Dean was in that packed courtroom during today's arraignment. She joins us now from Norfolk, Virginia. Hey, Libby.
Elizabeth, the only time the New York Attorney General Letitia James spoke in that courtroom today is when she pled not guilty to both of these charges, the first being bank fraud, the second falsifying claims to a financial institution. Things largely went as expected today, with the Attorney General arriving here at court, voluntarily surrendering to U.S. Marshals, where she was then fingerprinted and had her mugshot taken. Then came the arraignment that lasted just over half an hour long, and we learned some key timelines and key dates moving forward in this case. One of those being the trial date that has been set for January 26th. But before we even get to that trial date, there are going to be 2 motion hearings. One of those is going to take place in November, and it's all going to center around the defense's argument that the interim U.S. attorney here, Lindsay Halligan, was unlawfully appointed to her post. The other argument is going to center around the fact that the defense is going to argue that they want this case thrown out entirely because they believe it's, quote, selective prosecution. Now, when the attorney general did exit the courthouse here today, she was smiling. She had a large crowd greeting her, and she delivered these remarks.
This justice system, which has been used as a tool of revenge and a weapon against those individuals who simply did their job and who stood up for the rule of law. I have this belief in the justice system, in the rule of law, and I have a belief in America and all of its individuals who have stood with me, not only in New York, but all across this nation.
President Trump has pushed his Justice Department to bring this case, and the two have a long history, with James running a campaign on prosecuting Trump, then following through on that, bringing that civil case against the president back in 2022. We saw that play out in the courts. Now, President Trump said this ahead of the Attorney General's arraignment.
These are dirty cops. Letitia James is a dirty cop. You go after these people and they say how horrible you are, and yet I got indicted 5 times and impeached twice. Nobody says anything about that.
And Elizabeth, if the New York Attorney General is convicted, she faces a maximum sentence of 60 years in prison and the potential of $2 million in fines.
All right, Libby Dean reporting from Norfolk, Virginia. Thank you for more on all this. Former federal prosecutor Nima Rahmani joins us now. Nima, let's take these 2 hearings that are upcoming on this case. The first in November on this motion that Lindsay Halligan is not properly appointed to be U.S. attorney. If the judge throws her off the case, will he then also dismiss the indictment?
Not necessarily, Elizabeth. As long as there's another AUSA who's willing to handle the case is going to proceed. So certainly not a good look for Lindsay Halligan to be disqualified from the case, but it's not going to derail the case procedurally. Now, maybe the selective or vindictive prosecution motion might, but not the motion challenging Halligan's appointment.
All right, we're going to get to that vindictive prosecution motion in just a second, but you know, Lindsay Halligan was brought in because Trump's appointed U.S. attorney of the Eastern District of Virginia refused to bring these charges against both Letitia James and James Comey, reportedly saying he didn't think there was enough evidence to merit a prosecution. That's how Halligan got the job in the first place. She was willing to file charges when no one else in the office would. So can any U.S. attorney? I mean, right now she's got, today in court, she had a U.S. attorney from Missouri, not from the Eastern District of Virginia, to help her out.
Elizabeth, it's certainly telling that Eric Siebert would rather resign than indict Comey, and he wasn't the only one in the Eastern District of Virginia to resign. Now, Halligan, it's well known that she had no prosecution experience whatsoever. The first time she went into that grand jury was in the Comey case, and she was only able to get an indictment on 2 of the 3 counts. Now, she doesn't have prosecution experience. I don't think she should be handling this particular case as her first criminal prosecution, especially when it's very likely, almost certain, that Tish James is going to push this case all the way to jury trial.
Today in court, Tish James's lawyer signaled that they're going to argue vehemently that this is a case of vindictive prosecution. This argument, am I the only one who thinks it's slightly ironic? I mean, Letitia James campaigned to be district attorney, pledging to go after Trump.
It is ironic, and these arguments never win. President Trump made these arguments himself. He lost. Hunter Biden, through his lawyer, Abby Lowell, who's representing both Tish James and John Bolton, right, expect to see similar arguments in both those cases. It's a very high legal hurdle to meet. You have to show that the prosecution is purely for a constitutionally prohibited reason, and there's really no merit or probable cause to the case. These arguments are often raised, and they're routinely denied. So expect that same thing to happen in this case, Elizabeth.
All right, the charges against Tish James accuse her of lying about the reason she bought a house in Virginia in 2020. Prosecutors say that she said in documents, bank records, mortgage applications, that it would be a second residence, but that she actually rented it out. But the person who's been living in that house the whole time is her grandniece, and her grandniece doesn't pay rent, reportedly. And James, on her bank forms, only reported $1,350 in rent on her tax forms. Is that what they're going after her for, $1,350, or am I missing something?
Well, that's the defense in this case, that this was a material misstatement in support of a loan application, quite similar to what Donald Trump was charged with, right? So obviously anyone who's had a mortgage knows that
Except at a very different scale.
Sure, a much, much larger scale, obviously, with respect to the president. But we all know that if it's your primary residence or a vacation home, you're going to pay a lower mortgage, maybe a lower down payment. You're going to have to be putting more down and pay a higher interest rate if it's a rental or income property. So the defense is going to be that this was a second home, that you have a family member that's essentially house sitting. She is not paying rent. So you would think that the grand jury would have that financial paper trail lined up before they return an indictment, because if there's no rent being paid, that's a huge problem for the prosecution here, Elizabeth.
But we don't know what that grand jury saw before they indicted, and that is the key question. I guess we're going to find out in this hearing in December. Nima Rahmani, thank you so much. Great talking to you.
Of course, Elizabeth. Talk soon.
All right, coming up for us, X-ray poker tables, high-tech glasses, rigged shuffling machines. No, this isn't a plot to a movie. It's just a short list of the technology allegedly used in that illegal gambling scheme that prosecutors say involved an NBA coach named Chauncey Billups and dozens of others. So just how does it all work? Well, a casino cheating expert joins us live with a demonstration next. So the Portland Trailblazers are facing off against the Golden State Warriors tonight, but they're going to do it without their head coach, Chauncey Billups. Billups is on leave after he was arrested and indicted yesterday over his alleged involvement in Mafia-backed poker games. He's one of 31 defendants wrapped up in that case. Others include former Cleveland Cavalier Damon Jones and characters with nicknames like The Wrestler, Sugar, Black Tony, Juice, and Big Bruce, a cast that could fit right into a Scorsese movie. Prosecutors say the Mafia used Billups as a, quote, face card. That's a celebrity who lures in high rollers to rigged underground poker games. And making this all more Hollywood, these games used James Bond-like technology to cheat these unsuspecting players out of millions of dollars.
They used off-the-shelf shuffling machines that had been secretly altered in order to read the cards in the deck, predict which player at the table had the best poker hand, and relay that information to an off-site operator. Defendants used other cheating technologies, such as poker chip tray analyzers, which is a poker chip tray that secretly reads cards using a hidden camera, special contact lenses or eyeglasses that could read pre-marked cards, and an X-ray table that could read cards face down on the table.
Now, these are some of the images of that tech. The X-ray table on the left, the shuffling machine that's been tampered with on the right. The unwitting victims didn't stand a chance. And by the way, if they refuse to pay their debts, well, you've seen Goodfellas or Sopranos. You know what happens when you owe money to the mob. For more on all these games, and most importantly on the high tech involved, I'm joined now by casino cheating expert Sal Piacente. He's president of Universal Game Protection Development. Sal, it is so great to have you here. I'm going to bet that when, the feds read that staggering, stunning indictment yesterday and everybody was listening to it and going, oh my God, I thought this was only in the movies. You were the one person in America who was like, yep, I know that stuff.
I got to be honest, I was more surprised about the publicity it's getting. This is nothing new. The equipment they used is nothing new. The analyzer's been around for years. The shuffling machine's been around for years. And a lot of it isn't as high tech as people think, believe me. So when you go to a private game, you're literally walking into a lawless society. At least when you go to a casino to play, you have jurisdictions, you got regulators, you got the gaming commission, you got surveillance. I am not saying you're not going to get cheated. There has been casino cheating in poker rooms, believe me.
Yeah.
Collusion, people signaling, swapping cards, marking
counting cards. Yeah, there's all sorts of cheating, but this is cheating on an epic scale. You've got some stuff to show me. The first thing I'm intrigued by is and we'll get to the rigged card counting machine in a second, but the card counting machine sends information to, they said, an offsite operator. How does that offsite operator get that information to the people playing poker?
Well, this has not been proven, so I cannot say any cheating occurred. But if you look at Mike Postle, on that one suspicious poker play, he was always on his cell phone. He could have been receiving texts, but all the ones that I'm familiar with, they used earpieces.
Show me. What, do you have one there?
I just happen to have one.
You just happen to have one.
This is an inductive loop. This goes around your neck, and this transfers to the earpiece. It's all underneath the clothing. Now, it's funny because in one clip, when I took this out, and I said, here's the earpiece, they said, wow, that's small. And I said, wait a minute. No, that's not the earpiece. That's the magnet. That is the earpiece.
What is that? The size of a big grain of salt?
Pretty much, yes. So right
or a
before
peppercorn? Wait, how do you get that in your ear? But more importantly, how do you get it back out of your ear?
And you just drop it right in. Right now, that is right next to my ear canal, right next to my eardrum.
And someone could be talking to you through that.
Oh, it's like a third voice in my head. If you're sitting right next to me, you can't see it, and you can't hear it either.
How do you get it out?
That's it. It's out. Magnet.
Oh my God. Okay, so that's how somebody offsite was communicating back in. Talk me through this rigged card shuffler and why that's significant, because I think a card shuffler is a card shuffler. How is it rigged?
Well, their machines, I didn't ever get a chance to touch them. I'm going to go about what I'm reading, but I'm going to talk about what I'm familiar with.
Okay.
The Deckmate 2 has a camera inside it, legitimately. That way that camera records all the cards. It knows what's being dealt, and it knows if there's a card missing, and it knows the exact card that's missing. And it would flash a red light telling the surveillance and the dealer, there's something wrong here. They altered that machine to use that camera to know what everybody's receiving.
So it's reading the cards that everybody's being dealt so that the cheater at the poker table knows what his opponents have in their hand?
Correct. And then that person would relay the information back to the table, or that machine.
Through our tiny earpiece.
Right, absolutely. Also, there's been shuffle machines that don't shuffle the cards. They stay in order. So all I would have to do is this. Let's suppose me and you were playing poker.
Okay.
Right? These cards, these cards are set up already. They're set up already. I put them in a machine. The machine sounds like it's shuffling them, but it's not. Now I take them out. All I have to do is just give him a cut now. And now when I deal, you have a 6-8 to my 7 queen. You're going to stay in. Now you have a possible straight, 6-7, 6-8, 7-10. I have 2-3 clubs.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you just made your straight. You're going all in. And now I made my flush with clubs.
Okay, you're talking to somebody who doesn't ever play anything except go fish, but
basically I won.
Okay,
So now,
not surprising.
Some casinos now insist, or some players, not casinos, players insist that in private games, the dealer has to do a shuffle when they come out of that machine. So now the dealer has to employ a false shuffle. And I'll show you what that means. Here, watch this 7-2-10-9.
Okay.
When I put them into this deck, I'm going to make it look like this deck is being shuffled.
Okay.
So this deck is going to appear right now that it's being mixed.
Yes, very well mixed.
7, 2, 10, 9.
What?
Those cards stayed in order.
How did you do that?
Do you really want to know?
Yeah, actually.
Let's leave them face up.
Okay.
Okay, if I want to keep the whole deck in order, that's a real shuffle. At the last point, I push up, and you can't see it, but they're going through each other. Now I strip these out, and I go into a bad strip. I'm just stripping off the bottom.
So it's a sleight of hand, right, that you're employing right there. Hey.
Exactly.
What about the contact lenses and the fake glasses to read the cards?
Sure.
Is that a common thing? Because that was alleged to have been used also at these mob-rigged poker games.
If you look at this deck right here, there's nothing to see on these cards.
No, it looks like a regular card.
Looks like a regular deck. So watch this. If I look at these cards through these sunglasses.
Which cool dudes do at a poker game.
Absolutely, but really I have contact lenses. Now if you look at these cards, I can see a big A on that card. There's your ace, there's your jack, that's a 4, that's a 10. So I can actually see these cards as if they were face up with no problem at all.
Holy cow. And does people don't check when somebody comes in wearing glasses? And I guess it would be hard to check. Yeah.
I don't know if you could see that, but there's a mark on the back of that card.
Oh, yeah. It looks like I don't know.
The 9 is tough because it's a circle, but here, let me get to a king. You're going to see a big K on that king.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We see a big K there.
There's your king.
Wow.
But if I was wearing the contacts, you'd never see it.
Hey, are you surprised? I guess you're not. I've asked this question last night as well. Nobody's surprised that the mob is involved in this. But are you surprised that 4 mob families were all alleged to be involved in this ring?
No. Whatever it takes to get the money, they'll do whatever it takes. They'll team up or join up. If there's money involved, there's going to be thievery. If you have money, someone's thinking about how they can separate you from it. There's no doubt.
Sal Piacente, fascinating talking to you. I will never trust anybody again at Go Fish because I'll be sure they're cheating me. Thank you so much.
Stay out of private games.
Yeah, right. Crazy eights. That's when we're getting really crazy.
I'm in.
Have a great weekend. All right.
Thank you.
So, this alleged poker playing scheme is just one half of this big, huge announcement and the FBI investigations that's been rocking the NBA. The other half involves bets made on particular players' performances on court. NBA veteran Terry Rozier is facing charges of allegedly throwing a game and telling his friends in advance so they could bet on that game and win a lot of money. Well, his attorney, Jim Trusty, joins me live next, and he says, hold on 1 second. Of the dozens of people indicted in that wide-ranging sports gambling investigation, only one is a current NBA player. Plenty of former NBA players. Terry Rozier is a 10-year veteran of the league and a guard for the Miami Heat. He's accused of giving insider information to friends to help them win bets based on his performance on court. His attorney says Rozier is not a gambler and will win this fight. And joining us now is Terry Rozier's attorney, Jim Trusty. Jim, thanks so much for being here. So I just got to ask you, did you or Terry have any hint that this was coming, that the feds were investigating, that this indictment might be on the way?
Yeah, well, yes and no to some of those questions. And so it'd probably be helpful to explain what I mean. Look, this is a case I've been representing Terry for probably the better part of a year. And we knew there was an investigation. We knew that the NBA had cleared him of the exact same issue back in 2023. But we knew there was something up. And then the day came where 6 months ago, give or take, the Wall Street Journal ran a story that this was an investigation. This is a devastating moment professionally for Terry, linked to this investigation during his final year of a contract. So I reached out to the prosecutors in Brooklyn and I said, hey, I'm here. I represent him. Let me know when you want to talk. Ended up asking him, is he a target of the investigation? And, you know, part of me kind of knew he might be because he's a trophy, because he's a well-known name. But they said, no, he's a subject. That was the last communication I had yesterday morning. I got to tell you, process can tell you something about substance. You know, 6 a.m. they tell me we're arresting him in Orlando right now. First communication in months. That's a bad sign. You know, there was no reason to treat him differently that way.
Yeah, Jim, you know, you're a lawyer. You know, an internal investigation by a private organization like the NBA is very different from a criminal organization by the government, which has subpoena power, can pull in witnesses, can cut deals with other people in exchange for their testimony. Just because Terry was cleared by the NBA doesn't mean that the government won't come to a different conclusion.
No, that's true, but don't give it short shrift either. This was a very highly professional investigation that involved the FBI as well, is my understanding. And it was led by an official from the NBA who basically was a Southern District of New York prosecutor for a long time before she came there. So they interviewed Terry twice. They took his phone. They downloaded every text. They interviewed various witnesses. This was not some kind of lighthearted, quick touch. Right. This was a pretty investigation. But Liz, to your point about getting cooperators, that's really my biggest concern here, is that there are some monstrous people on this case, not necessarily the 31 case, you know, that you just talked about, but the people involved in this case involve a guy who has a record for stabbing people, who has been manipulating athletes like Jonte Porter. I mean, there's some pretty monstrous guys, and if they're in bed with them for cooperators, that's like saying Pigpen is clean. I mean, these guys, dirty as it gets. So if that's their case, we're gonna have a good fight.
You bring up Jonte Porter. He's also a former NBA player who pled guilty last year to these sorts of prop bets where he would tip off people, bet on me having a bad night, and then mysteriously fall ill during the game. He pled guilty twice. His sentencing has been postponed. He's now due to be sentenced in early December. Are you at all concerned that he is testifying against Terry?
He won't hurt Terry. There's nothing he can say about Terry. I mean, Jonte Porter was kind of a bench player for Toronto. Terry, you know, was sitting on a $100 million contract as well as endorsement contracts. Terry was in a very good place financially. He doesn't know who Jonte Porter is, basically, and he certainly doesn't have any worries that Porter is going to deliver him on a platter to these prosecutors, despite the incentive for all these guys to do that.
So you're saying categorically Terry Rozier never, ever told somebody, I'm going to go out sick, or I'm going to stop mid-game and say I have an ankle injury. Tonight would be a good night to bet on me having lower than normal performance stats.
Yeah, look, the last part's the key, right? If you're saying he's part of a conspiracy, he's got to be somebody who is trying to facilitate these bets against him performing well. That never happened. This is a guy who got to the end of the season with the Hornets banged up. He's a stoic guy. He doesn't whine, but he was banged up. He had a hurt foot. He got treatment for it in the days that followed this game that matters against the Pelicans. And the reality is, you know, there's a lot of people that are in a position to know that he was banged up. His own agent was telling the coaches, hey, sit him out, man. You're eliminated from the playoffs. He's hurt. Let him rest. So this was not some sort of like classified document moment. But again, whether or not he confided in some people or let it out that he was hurt, it doesn't matter. That's not the same as conspiring. And so I'm not seeing smoking gun evidence in the indictment, but we got a lot to look at. We have to look at discovery. We have to see if the government is just fishing for a trophy or if they think they have something better. But everything I see, everything I anticipated in terms of this indictment, is kind of bland when it comes to Terry. Pretty minuscule when it comes to Terry compared to everybody else.
All right, Jim Trusty, we will follow the case closely. You're welcome back anytime to talk about it. Appreciate it.
All right, good seeing you.
All right, good to see you too. All right, coming up for us, we're going to look at the role that crime is playing in the pivotal elections coming up across America in the big cities. Big elections. Next. All right, you're in for a treat because Brian Enton is sitting in for Chris Cuomo. He joins me tonight. You're going to take a close look. We've got a lot of big elections coming up in 10 days. And crime is the one through line in almost every single one of those elections.
It is, and you're going to be jealous of me, Elizabeth, because next week on Tuesday, I am getting in an RV and driving pretty much across the country, which I did.
I'm so jealous of you,
It's actually
Brian.
cool. I mean, you probably don't like the RV part, but the drive, but going.
I camped. I grew up camping in RVs.
Did you?
Yeah,
Yeah,
they were RVs. They were really small, rinky-dink.
See, I always wanted to go in an RV
but-
as a kid, and like my parents
Yeah.
never would do it, so I like kind of fulfilling
Are you
my
gonna drive
childhood
it?
dream. Oh yeah, I drive it. We've done it once before, but we basically go and we talk to voters across the country. There's these
great.
elections coming up a week from
No
Tuesday.
better way.
Yeah, and crime is a big issue. Coming up, Cuomo next hour, we're going to be talking about the Philadelphia DA race, which we're looking into these like smaller races that people don't talk about on the national level, but that are so important. I mean, crime is out of control in a lot of places, including Philadelphia. They say the numbers are down, but I went there.
They're
I mean,
down,
it's-
but they're still pretty. It's like Chicago's murder rate, which
Correct.
has come down significantly, but is still too high.
Yeah.
Philadelphia, terrible. And you know what? It's big in the New York City mayor's race.
Yeah.
The issue of crime, subway crime, homelessness, all interlinked. And 3 candidates with 3 very different proposals on how to fix it. So
It's really interesting. We're
gonna
looking into
be
these
really
specific
interesting to
cases
do
where
this.
they've made mistakes. I mean, it's fascinating.
hey,
So,
what a great show.
yeah, have
All
a great
right.
weekend, Elizabeth.
You too. Thanks so much, Brian.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.